Mr. Young.
Mr. Mayor, which station will close, which fire station will close, and how can you assure the city will be safe with 11 firefighters per shift and only 2 stations?
Okay. Andy didn't quite yell that loud enough, so I'll have to repeat that. The question had to do with going down from 3 stations to 2 stations. Which station might that entail? That will be under the advice and discussion with our fire chief and evaluating. Right now, Station 4 of all the stations has overwhelmingly least amount of calls. That would probably be the likely station, but that is yet to be determined. I would say that. As far as 11 firefighters, I would say that most communities in America have less than 11 firefighters serving their community. So more is always better, less is less desirable. That can always be said. But at the end of the day, money only goes so far, and you provide the funds as best you can provide the services. So I'm confident with our highly skilled, trained, and motivated department, as well as relying on mutual aid, both other communities, we relying on them and them relying on us, that we will be able to provide a safe community as far as fire protection is concerned. Yes, Greg.
Bill, a few years ago, Westlake outsourced its sanitation and recycling program to BFI. BFI hired all the employees. It was a net cost reduction to the citizens and an avoidance of major investments for the city. Has Elyria considered outsourcing sanitation, and if not, why not?
Basic question was looking at other cities. Many cities, perhaps most, have outsourced their sanitation collection with private haulers. Westlake and many other cities. In fact, in Lorain County, Elyria and Oberlin we're the only 2 communities that still collect our own garbage. The rest is done by Allied Waste, Republic now that purchased them. Our rates are right in line. They are a little cheaper in some of the other communities. They do vary from community to community. A lot of it has to do with the density within that community. Some homes are further apart than others, things of that nature. I would say it's likely that a private hauler could undercut us in expense. It's twofold. One, they own the landfill. That's one thing that they have to their advantage. But the other part is they would very much like for us to be out of business. And I think it's in our community's interest. I think it's in Lorain County's interest that Elyria remain in this business. While our rates may be slightly higher, I think that's one of the services in our city that we get constant praise for, and how dedicated our workers are. When trash may fall out of the truck, they grab it in a hurry. I mean, there's exceptions, of course, but on the whole, we get comments on a regular basis praising our sanitation workers. Question, given the economic circumstances we're in, and the timing happens to be such that all of our collective bargaining agreements are due 1st of July. So we will be beginning in the next couple of months official negotiations with all the collective bargaining collective bargaining units. So the question has to do, is this an opportunity to work between the city administration and council with the labor unions? And it is, of course, very possible. We hope that they'll find opportunities and see where we can all benefit, both the city and being able to provide more efficient services, as well as maintaining their livelihoods by making more flexible work rules. We attempted that in the last contract on some matters, and we made some progress. We'd certainly like to see more, and maybe the present circumstances will give us that opportunity. So I would view your statement as more of a statement than a question, because it's out of our hands. We will make every attempt with the bargaining units to look for more flexible rules, and we'll see how that plays out. Thanks. Question about an alliance relationship of sorts with Lorain County Metro Parks, similar to what the City of Lorain and the Metro Parks did at Lakeview Park. It comes up more and more, certainly in these times. And I think for everyone that brings up the idea of partnering and perhaps turning it over in some fashion to the county metro parks, you get a similar, if not a greater reaction, saying this is our park, it needs to be within our control. I think the best of both worlds is it to remain our park and the county help pay for its maintenance. I think that would be great. I'm going to work on that one in the meantime. But that certainly would be discussed. Mr. Martin and I speak regularly, including this morning, on related matters, and that is a possibility.
But I am a representative of the Elyria firefighter. My question to you is, why is the fire department taking the major blunt of cuts here with no police being laid off and jeopardizing the safety of the firefighters and the citizens, and then getting the least amount in return on an income tax?
Thanks, Andy. As far as the breakdown, and you look at the revenues and the as far as the proposed tax increase in the 900,000. I'm sorry, well, it didn't break that price down. You're referring to another presentation, but as it relates to trying to think, we had the $900,000 figure having to do with the cuts. The fire department gets most of the revenue out of the general fund, and when you look proportionately, having made cuts in virtually every other department down to its absolute bare bones, and every department will make that claim. Of course, the fire department as well. Every department will say they're operating below standards to provide the service that they feel should be provided. The police, largely, to expand their operations and to be able to provide extended services, they've done so with the use of civilians at a considerable rate. Fire, there's little opportunity. There's opportunities for dispatch, for example. The dispatch could be turned over to 911, for example, that the fire service could provide. That would be a way to turn over responsibilities to civilians, reducing expenses. Police did that. Their dispatch used to be done by police officers, now it's done by civilians. And there's many other areas in the police department that historically were done by sworn officers that are done by civilians. So in the cuts that you'll be seeing here in the coming weeks in the police department, they're going to be done through civilians, largely, hopefully entirely. Now, what that will also mean, while the civilians will be laid off, the police officers who remain are going to be providing that diminished service in our community, because they're going to have to be supplementing all the other work that's being required of the civilians. So there will be a reduction in the police service, clearly by the $700,000 range, and it may be more. So fire, it's very proportional. Fire uses the greatest share of the general fund. It's obvious that they would have to absorb that proportional decrease. So fire will receive that decrease, police not far behind that, parks behind that, which will basically shut down our parks and recreation system. Yes, Mr. Horton.
One more question.
Mr. Horton.
Yes, Mark Horton, representing the Ohio firefighters, retired last week from the fire department. You referred to many communities, staffing-wise. Have you done your research into comparable communities as of Elyria and the staffing that you're going to provide from now on? Do you agree with me that it would be the least staffing provided in the state of Ohio for a community your size?
I'm not sure if it would be. It would be close. It might be. I haven't compared them all together. But I'll also say, when you compare the peer communities and the funds for an older industrial city and the money we historically pay in our fire service, I would say that that's one of the top several reasons why our finances are in such turmoil that they are in. We spend, even with the cuts we're speaking of for the fire department, and we can make a whole other presentation on the impact of our fire department on the budget and the opportunity costs of the balance of our city. But even with these reductions I've described, we still will be spending in the neighborhood of $7.5 million on the fire department. $7.5 million. 8 firefighters made collectively $1 million last year. And these are the kind of circumstances we find ourselves in. Historically, over the years, and you compare us to peer cities, and I'll stop. Just a few more sentences. When comparing police and fire, police over the years, when there's reductions, when there's less officers, there's fewer on patrol. It's not as dramatic of an event. In the fire service, when there's less firefighters, you end up closing stations. It's a very dramatic event, and it seldom happens because of the hoopla surrounding that. Just in our station, when we closed Station 2, essentially, we had another station 45 seconds apart. Portions of that district were just as close to the next station, yet it had the appearance that we left an entire portion of our community, undefended, which is not a fair representation of that reduction. So I would argue, when you say comparing us to peer cities, I would say part of the reason why we're peer cities and in the financial straits that we're in is because we spend so much money on our fire service. $7.5 million for us to provide fire service should provide an exemplary service within our city. And it's up to, to the question about labor agreements. There are labor agreements changes that could happen between the city and the firefighters that could change work rules and could provide a substantially better service for the money that we spend, the $7.5 million that we spend. And I can come back for a whole nother hour, and Mr. Horton and I can debate back and forth.
You're more than welcome to stay either.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.